The Satanic Mill by Otfried Preussler. The third year, 12 between the years. It was a hard week for Crabbit. He felt as if he were back in his early days at the mill. Every sack weighed as heavy as it really was, and it had to be carried from granary to grinding room and back to the meal store. Crabbit was spared nothing, now that he could not work magic, not a drop of sweat, not a sore place on his skin. Every evening he sank on his bed, exhausted, but he could not sleep for hours. When you can work magic, you have only to close your eyes and recite a spell, and then you are asleep at once, fast asleep for as long as you wish. It may be that I'm going to miss that worst of all, thought Crabbit. When he finally did fall asleep, after lying awake so long, he was tormented by nightmares, and he knew they did not come by chance. He could easily work out who was sending him such dreams. Dressed in rags, Crabbit is struggling with a cart of stones, pulling it over the fields on the end of a rope. It is hard work in hot summer weather. He is thirsty, his throat dry as a bone, and there is not a spring of water in sight, not a tree to give him shade. The devil take that cart. He is taking it to Blashki, the cattle dealer of Commons, and he is working for a mere pittance. But a man must live on something, and ever since his accident, that was in Gerbesdorf, when he was caught in the machinery of the mill, and it crushed his right arm to the elbow. Ever since then, Crabbit must be glad of any work that comes his way, so he drags himself along with the cart of stones, and he thinks he hears, or else he hears himself thinking it, he thinks he hears the master's hoarse voice saying, "How do you like life now you're a cripple, Crabbit? You might have been better off if you'd listened to me when I asked you if you wanted to take my place at the mill in the fen. If you had the choice again today, would you still say no?" Night after night, Crabbit dreamed that some such fate had overtaken him. He was old or sick. He was in prison, though innocent of any crime. He had been pressed into the army and lay wounded to death in a wheat field, watching the crushed blades of wheat run red with blood from his wounds. And at the end of these dreams, he would always hear the master's voice asking him, "Would you still say no, Crabbit, if I gave you the same choice today?" Only once did the master himself actually appear in his dreams, and that was on the long night before his week's grace ran out. To help Juro, Crabbit had turned himself into a horse. The master, dressed as a Polish nobleman, has brought him to Witchenau market for 100 guilders, has bought him in Witchenau market for 100 guilders, along with his saddle and his halter. The horse is handed over to him. The master rides him pitilessly over the moor, over sticks and stones, over hedges and ditches, through thorns and mire. "Remember that I am your master." The miller brings the whip down on him, driving the spurs into his flanks. Blood is flowing from them. He feels it run warm down the inside of his thighs. "I'll teach you." A gallop to the left, a gallop to the right, and then on to the next village. A tug at the reins, and they stop outside a smithy. "Hey there, smith, where the devil are you hiding?" The smith comes running up to ask what the gentleman wants, wiping his hands on his leather apron. The master swings himself out of the saddle. "Shoe me this horse, and shoe him with red-hot iron," says he. The smith cannot believe his ears. With red-hot iron, sir? Must I tell you everything twice? I'll teach you to work faster." "Barto," the smith calls for his apprentice, "take the reins and hold this gentleman's horse." The smith's apprentice is a freckled urchin who might be Lobash's brother. "And take the heaviest shoes you have," the miller tells him. "Show me your stock." The smith leads him into the forge, while the boy holds the horse, talking to him in Wendish. "Quiet then, old horse, quiet now. Well, you're all of a tremble." Crabbit rubs his head against the boy's shoulder. If I were free of the halter, he thinks, I could try to save myself. The boy sees that the horse is hurt. The leather strap has rubbed a sore place by his left ear. "Just a minute," says he. "I'd best loosen the buckle a bit. It won't take a moment." He loosens the buckle and pulls the halter off over the horse's head. As soon as he is rid of it, Crabbit turns into a raven. Croaking, he rises in the air and makes for Schwarzkolm. The sun is shining in the village of Schwarzkolm, and below him he sees the singer standing near the well, a straw basket in her hand, feeding the chickens, when a shadow passes over him and he hears the cry of a hawk in his ear. "The master!" Crabbit thinks at once. Swift as an arrow, wings spread, Crabbit swoops down into the well, where he changes into a fish. Will he be safe now? Too late, he realizes he is trapped. There is no way out of the well. "Singer!" he thinks, directing all the power of his mind at her. Help me out of this well. The girl dips her hand into the well. Crabbit becomes a narrow gold ring on her finger, and so he comes back into the world above. Suddenly, there is a nobleman dressed in Polish clothes standing by the well. He has only one eye, and he wears a red riding coat with silver lacing and black galloons. Can you tell me where you got that pretty ring, young woman? Let me see it. He is stretching out his hand, reaching for the ring. Crabbit turns into a grain of barley, slips from the girl's finger, and falls into the basket. As she scatters the next handful, she throws him among the chickens. And suddenly the man in the red coat is gone. There is a strange rooster, black as coal, with only one eye, pecking at the corn, but Crabbit is faster. Seizing his advantage, he turns into a fox. Quick as a flash, he falls on the black rooster and bites through his neck. There is a crackle of chaff and straw between his teeth. Nothing but chaff and straw. When Crabbit woke, he was bathed in sweat. He found that he had bitten into his straw mattress and was gasping for breath. It was some time before his heart stopped thudding. He took his defeat of the master in his dream as a good omen, and now he felt sure he would win, and the master's days were numbered. He, Crabbit, would put an end to the miller's evil deeds. He was the man appointed to break the master's power. That evening he went to the master's room. My answer is still the same, he said. Make whoever you like your successor. As for me, I refuse your offer. The master heard him out quietly. Go to the woodshed, said he, and get yourself a spade and pick. There's a grave to be dug out in the fen. That will be your last task. Without replying, Crabbit turned and left the room. When he reached the shed, a figure emerged from the shadows. I've been waiting for you, Crabbit. Am I to take word to her? Crabbit took the ring of hair from the pocket of his smock. Tell her you carry a message from me, he said. Tell her that tomorrow, on the last evening of the year, she may go to the miller and ask for my freedom as we arranged. And he dressed. And he described her house to Juro. If you show her the ring, he went on, she will know that you come from me. But don't forget to tell her she is free to come to the mill or not to come. If she comes, that is good. And if she doesn't come, it is good too, since I won't mind what happens to me then. He gave Juro the ring, embracing him. Promise to do as I say. You won't persuade her to do anything she doesn't really want to do? I promise. I promise, said Juro. And a raven, with a ring of hair in its beak, set off on its flight to Schwarzkollen. Crabbit went into the shed. Was that the coffin standing in the corner? He shouldered his pick and spade and trudged the white snow out into the fen until he came to the waste ground. He found a place where a dark rectangle stood out in the white snow. Was it meant for him, or did it mark the master's grave? About this time tomorrow, thought Crabbit, driving his spade into the ground. About this time tomorrow we will know. The next day after breakfast, Juro took his friend aside and gave back the ring, telling him he had talked to the girl, and it was all settled. That evening at dusk, the girl from Schwarzkollen came to the mill wearing her communion dress, with the white band around her forehead. Hanzo opened the door to her and asked what she wanted, and she asked to speak to the miller. I am the miller. Thrusting his men aside, the master came to meet her. He had on his black coat and three-cornered hat, and he was pale as death. What do you want? He asked. The girl looked steadily at him. I want my young man, said she. Your young man? The miller laughed, an evil, bleating sound like a billygoat laughing. I don't know your young man. His name is Crabbit, said the girl, and I love him. Crabbit, said the master. Now the master was trying to bully her. Why, young woman, do you even know the man? Could you pick him out from among my other journeymen? Yes, I know him, said the singer. Anyone can say that, the master turned to his men. Go into the black room and stand in a row side by side and don't move. Crabbit expected they would have to turn into ravens now. He was placed between Andrush and Stashko. Stay where you are and don't any of you move. Not you either, Crabbit, said the master. At the first sound I hear you make, she dies. He took a black cloth from his coat pocket and bound it around the girl's eyes. Then he led her in. If you can show me which is your young man, you may take him away with you. Crabbit was horrified. He had not expected this. How was he to help her? Even the ring of hair was no use now. The girl walked up and down the row of the miller's men. Once, twice, Crabbit could hardly stand upright. He felt that his life was lost and hers too. He was overwhelmed by such fear as he had never felt before. She will die, and it's my doing, he kept thinking. My doing. Then the singer, who had walked up and down the row of journeymen 3 times, put out her hand and pointed at Crabbit. This is the man, she said. Are you sure? Yes, she said, I am sure. And with that, it was all over. She untied the cloth from her eyes and went up to Crabbit. You are free, she said. The master staggered back and leaned against the wall, while the men stood where they were, as if turned to stone. Fetch your things from the attic, all of you, and be off with you to Schwarzkopf, said Jiro. You can spend the night in the loft of the village hall. The miller's men came back to life and crept out of the black room. The master, they all knew, would not live to see New Year's Day. At midnight he must die, and the mill would go up in flames. Merton, with his wry neck, pressed Crabbit's hand warmly. You've avenged Donda and Michael, and all the others too. Crabbit was dumb, unable to say a word, but the girl put her arm around his shoulders and wrapped him in her shawl of wool. It was warm, soft, then warm, like a cloak of safety around him. Let's go, Crabbit. And he let her lead him out of the mill and through the fen, away to Schwarzkopf. At last, when they saw the lights of the village flicker out between the tree trunks, one by one, he asked her, How did you pick me out of the others? I could feel that you were afraid, she said. You were afraid for me, and that was how I knew you. As they walked toward the houses of the village, snow began to fall very gently, fine flakes of snow, like flour, falling on them from some great sieve. And that is the end.